You've been looking for signs that she misses you. But the only sign you should be chasing is the one in the mirror. The quiet shift in your eyes, the growing stillness in your chest, the slow return of the fire you thought she took from you. That's the real signal, not a text, not a story view, not a mutual friend's comment. But the moment you realize you don't care what she's doing because you're too focused on what you're becoming, that's when you know the transformation is real. Not when you stop hurting, but when you stop measuring your worth by her attention. Most men think healing means forgetting, but it doesn't. Healing means remembering. Remembering who you were before you started bending, before you started shrinking, before you made her the center of your world. You weren't born to orbit anyone. You were born to stand on your own ground, to build something real, to live with such intensity that people can't help but notice. But somewhere along the way you confused love with dependence. You mistook obsession for loyalty, and now in the silence you're facing the truth. You gave her power over your peace. And that power wasn't taken, it was handed over, one compromise at a time, one ignored boundary, one swallowed truth. But here's the good news, you can take it back. Not with a message, not with a grand gesture, but with every decision you make from this moment forward. Every time you choose discipline over distraction. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it. Every time you walk away from something that no longer serves you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And slowly, the man you were starts rising again, not as a reaction to her leaving, but as a declaration of your independence. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear, clear in your purpose, clear in your standards, clear in the fact that your life doesn't pause for anyone. You don't need her to validate your growth. You don't need her to see your progress. In fact, the most powerful victories are the ones no one witnesses. The early mornings, the late nights, the silent reps, the unread books finished, the goals achieved in solitude. That's where true strength is built. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where only discipline and willpower keep you moving. And when you live like that, with relentless consistency, you stop chasing closure. You become it. You stop wondering if she regrets leaving. You stop caring because your life is expanding in a direction she can't follow. And that's the ultimate form of power, not making her miss you, but making her irrelevant to your mission. You don't crush her ego by hating her. You crush it by outgrowing her. By becoming someone so focused, so driven, so emotionally free that the idea of you needing her approval becomes absurd. That's what lingers, not your anger, not your silence, but your evolution, the undeniable truth that you didn't break, you leveled up. And when you walk through the world like that, with purpose in your step and peace in your soul, you don't need revenge. You don't need acknowledgement. You just keep moving. Because the man you're becoming doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. His future is too bright to turn around. You don't need her to see the change. You don't need her to acknowledge it, to comment on it, to feel it. The most powerful transformations are silent, not announced, but lived. They don't come with fanfare. They come with early mornings when no one's watching. They come with quiet focus in the gym, in the office, in the mirror, when you're rebuilding your discipline one choice at a time. That's where the real war is won. Not in messages, not in drama, not in emotional reactions, but in the daily decision to become more than you were yesterday. Because healing isn't passive. It's not something that happens to you. It's something you create. And the moment you stop waiting for time to fix you and start building yourself with intention, everything changes. You realize that no contact isn't about her, it's about you. It's about creating space, not to miss her, but to find yourself again. To reconnect with the version of you that had dreams before they were diluted by compromise. The version that didn't need permission to be great. The version that didn't apologize for wanting more. That man didn't disappear. He was buried under layers of acceptance. Acceptance of less, acceptance of disrespect, acceptance of being taken for granted. But he's still there, and he's waiting for you to stop mourning the relationship and start fighting for your future. Most men think strength is about suppressing emotion, but real strength is about directing it. Channeling the pain, the frustration, the betrayal, not into anger, not into revenge, but into action. Every ounce of hurt can become fuel. Every memory of being dismissed can become motivation. Every moment she made you feel small can be the spark that ignites your rise. You don't have to hate her to move forward. You just have to stop letting her existence define your progress. The truth is, she's not your obstacle. Your inaction is. Your hesitation is. Your fear of becoming someone she can't control is. But that's exactly who you need to become. Someone she can't understand, someone who doesn't react, someone who doesn't beg, someone who simply moves with clarity, with purpose, with a life so focused that she becomes a footnote, not a chapter. That's how you reclaim power, not by making her feel guilty, not by making her jealous, but by living so fully, so authentically, so independently that her opinion no longer matters. And when that shift happens, when you stop checking her world and start building your own, you'll feel it. A deep, quiet confidence, not loud, not arrogant, but unshakable. The kind that comes from knowing you faced your pain and chosen growth anyway. That kind of man doesn't need attention, he commands it. Not because he demands it, but because his energy, his presence, his results speak for themselves. You don't become great by avoiding heartbreak. You become great by refusing to let it define you, by using it as the foundation for a stronger mindset, a sharper discipline, a deeper commitment to self-respect. So stop waiting for closure. Stop looking for signs. Stop measuring your healing by whether she notices you're gone. Close the door with action, with progress, with a life so powerful, so undeniable, that the only thing left to do is move forward. Not because you hate the past, but because your future is too important to waste another second. You were never meant to beg for a place in someone's life. You were meant to build a life so strong, so full of purpose, that anyone who walks away realizes too late what they lost. And when you live like that, with fire in your mission and steel in your soul, you don't need her to come back. You become the kind of man who never needed her to begin with. You're not broken. You're being rebuilt. And that process isn't gentle. It's not quiet. It's not comfortable. It's fire. It's pressure. It's the weight of silence pressing down on your chest, forcing you to either collapse or rise. Most men collapse. They interpret pain as proof of failure. They see loneliness as defeat. They confuse heartbreak with weakness. But you, if you're still listening, if you're still breathing through the ache, if you're still showing up even when it feels pointless, you're not weak. You're in the middle of a transformation so deep, so fundamental, that one day you'll look back and realize this was the moment everything changed. Not because she left, but because you refused to stay the same. Because you stopped running from the pain and started using it. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. They chase pleasure, distraction, quick fixes. But growth doesn't live there. It lives in the grind, in the repetition, in the choice to do the hard thing when no one is watching. That's where you're building something real. Not just muscle, not just success, but character. The kind that doesn't flinch when tested. The kind that doesn't beg for validation. The kind that stands tall in silence. Not because it's empty, but because it's full. Full of purpose, full of discipline, full of unshakable self-belief. And that kind of man, he doesn't need her to see him. He doesn't need her to regret. He doesn't need her at all, because his worth isn't tied to her attention. It's proven in his actions, in the way he wakes up early, in the way he stays late, in the way he keeps going when every part of him wants to quit. That's the real battle, not against her. Against the part of you that still doubts, that still fears, that still wonders if you're enough. And every time you choose progress over pain, discipline over desire, growth over comfort, you win. Not a loud victory, not one that makes headlines, but a quiet internal shift, the kind that changes your posture, your voice, your energy. People will notice, not because you tell them, but because you carry yourself differently. Like you've been through hell and came out with a mission. Because you have. And your mission isn't revenge, it's resurrection. Resurrection of the man you were before you started compromising your standards. Before you let someone else's opinion shape your self-worth. Before you made her the center of your emotional universe. That man wasn't lost, he was buried. And now you're digging him out, one decision at a time, one workout, one cold shower, one page read, one goal achieved. That's how you rebuild, not in a single moment, but in 1,000 small acts of courage. And when you live like that, with consistency, with fire, with relentless focus, you stop caring about her reaction, because your reaction to life is what matters. How you respond to loss, how you handle rejection, how you keep moving when everything in you wants to stop. That's what defines you, not the breakup, not the silence, not the past, but what you do now, in this moment, with this breath, with this choice. You don't need her to come back to prove you're valuable. You don't need her to admit she was wrong. You just need to keep going. Because the man you're becoming doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. His future is too bright, his purpose too clear, his standards too high. And when you finally stand in that truth, when you truly believe you are enough, not because of what you've lost, but because of what you're building, that's when you win. Not by crushing her ego, but by no longer needing her to validate yours. You don't need to prove anything to her. You don't need to show her your success, your body, your new life, because the moment you feel that urge, you've already lost a little. Not to her, but to the ghost of what was. The real victory isn't in her seeing you rise, it's in you no longer caring whether she does. That's the silent revolution. That's when you break free, not just from her, but from the need for her recognition. Most men use no contact as a strategy to make her miss them, but real no contact is deeper. It's internal. It's the decision to stop feeding your mind with her image, her voice, her energy. It's deleting not just her number, but the mental space she occupies. Because until you clear that out, you can't build anything new. You're still living in the ruins, hoping she'll come back to see what she destroyed. But you weren't built to rebuild for an audience. You were built to rise for yourself. And the most powerful thing you can do, the most disruptive, the most irreversible, is to become someone even you didn't see coming. Not the same man with a better haircut. Not the same version with more money, but a completely new standard. A man who doesn't react to disrespect, who doesn't tolerate mediocrity, who doesn't beg for loyalty because he demands it through his own actions. That man doesn't need attention. He doesn't chase validation. He earns it by simply being who he said he'd become. And that kind of evolution, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the moments no one sees, when you choose the gym over the couch, the book over the phone, the goal over the comfort. It happens when you wake up angry, not at her, but at the version of you that accepted less. And instead of lashing out, you channel that fire into your work, into your body, into your future. That's how you win, not by making her regret, but by making your past irrelevant. Because when you live with that level of discipline, that level of focus, that level of self-respect, you stop playing the game altogether. You step off the board. You become unpredictable, unreachable, not because you're hiding, because you're too busy building. And the deeper you go into your mission, the further she fades. Not because you forget her, but because she simply doesn't matter anymore. That's the ultimate form of power, not hating her, not loving her, but transcending her, moving so far forward that she can't even be a shadow in your rear view. You don't crush her ego by hurting her. You crush it by healing yourself so completely that her presence or absence no longer affects your peace. That's the real revenge. Not drama, not coldness, not success for show, but peace. Deep, unshakable, earned peace. The kind that comes from knowing you faced your pain, stared at your weaknesses, and chosen to grow anyway. Most men want to be loved, but the strongest men want to be respected. By themselves first. And when you earn that, when you look in the mirror and see a man who doesn't compromise, who doesn't break, who doesn't look back, you become untouchable. Not because you're perfect, but because you're committed to growth, to truth, to the daily grind of becoming more. And when you live like that, with fire in your chest and purpose in your steps, you don't need her to come back. You don't need her to apologize. You don't need closure, because you are the closure, the end of weakness, the beginning of strength, the proof that a man doesn't fall apart when he's left. He rises, sharper, clearer, and more dangerous than ever. And when you finally walk into your future like that, unbroken, focused, free, you won't even remember her name, not because you erased her, but because you became someone she could never hold. You don't need to erase her. You don't need to hate her. You don't need to pretend it never happened. The past isn't your enemy. Your attachment to it is. Every time you replay the breakup, every time you imagine a different ending, every time you wonder what you could have done differently, you're not reflecting. You're reliving. And reliving keeps you trapped in a loop of pain while the world moves forward without you. The truth is, she was never the problem. The problem was what you allowed the relationship to do to you, how it softened your edges, how it dimmed your fire, how it made you forget your own strength. But you can't fix that by going back. You fix it by going deeper, into your purpose, into your discipline, into the unshakable belief that you are more than what someone else decided you were worth. Most men think healing means forgetting, but real healing means understanding. It means seeing clearly that love shouldn't cost you your identity, that respect shouldn't be earned through suffering, that your worth shouldn't be negotiated. And once you see that, truly see it, you stop begging for a second chance. You start building a new life. one that doesn't include waiting, hoping, or wondering. You become a man of action, not reaction. You don't wait for motivation, you create it. You don't wait for confidence, you build it, rep by rep, day by day, decision by decision. Because confidence isn't something you feel, it's something you earn. And you earn it by doing the things that scare you, by showing up when you're broken, by proving to yourself over and over that you don't quit. That's how you rebuild. Not with words, not with intentions, but with consistency, with relentless silent progress. And the more you build, the less space she takes up in your mind. Not because you force it, because you replace her with something greater, your mission, your growth, your future. That's where your energy belongs, not in her past, but in your next level. Because the man you're becoming doesn't care about her opinion. He doesn't care about her life. He cares about his standards, his health, his focus, his peace. And when you live like that, with clarity, with discipline, with a spine of steel, you stop being affected by her existence. Whether she's happy, whether she's single, whether she's watching, none of it matters, because your value isn't tied to her attention. It's tied to your actions, to the way you wake up early, to the way you stay committed, to the way you keep going when everything in you wants to stop. That's real power. Not loud, not aggressive, but deep, unshakable, the kind that radiates without effort. And when you carry that energy, when you move through the world like a man who has been through fire and came out with a mission, people notice, not because you announce it, but because you live it. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll look back and see you haven't thought about her in weeks. Not because you tried to forget, because you became someone too focused, too driven, too alive to look back. That's the goal, not revenge, not regret, not closure, but evolution, a complete transformation, not for her, not for anyone, but for you. Because the greatest act of rebellion in a world that tries to break you is to rise, rebuild, and become someone even you didn't see coming. And when you finally stand in that truth, when you walk with purpose, speak with calm, and live with fire, you won't need her to know what she lost. The world will. And more importantly, you will. You don't need to be understood. You don't need her to see why you changed, to know the pain you've carried, to recognize the war you've fought in silence. In fact, the moment you stop craving that understanding is the moment you become truly free, because seeking her approval, even in your transformation, means she still holds power. And real power isn't about changing for someone else's realization. It's about changing so completely that their opinion no longer registers, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of pure, unshakable focus on who you're becoming. Most men get stuck in the need to be seen, to be noticed, to be admired, to be regretted. But the strongest men disappear. They step out of the noise. They stop performing. They stop reacting. They go silent, not in weakness, but in preparation. Like a storm gathering strength before it strikes. And when they re-emerge, it's not with a message, not with a threat, but with a presence so solid, so undeniable that words aren't needed. Their energy speaks. Their results speak. Their life speaks. And that's what lingers, not drama, not anger, but evolution, the quiet, relentless kind that doesn't announce itself. It simply is. You don't need her to witness your rise. You just need to live it. Every early morning, every late night, every time you choose growth over comfort, discipline over desire, purpose over distraction. That's where the real battle is won. Not in conversations, not in confrontations, but in the private moments when no one is watching, when you could quit, but you don't, when you could scroll, but you work, when you could numb the pain, but you face it. That's courage, not the loud kind, the quiet, consistent kind that builds empires. And you're not building a business, you're building a life so strong, so focused, so full of meaning that the past doesn't pull you. It fuels you. Every mistake, every betrayal, every moment you felt small, you're using it. Not to hurt others, not to seek revenge, but to become someone who can never be broken the same way again. That's the goal. Not to make her regret, not to make her jealous, but to make your former self proud, to look in the mirror and see a man who didn't collapse under pressure, who grew under it, who didn't run from pain, who used it as a blueprint, who didn't waste his suffering, who transformed it into strength. And when you live like that, with fire in your mission and steel in your spine, you stop measuring your progress by her reactions. You measure it by your peace, by your focus, by how little space she takes up in your mind. And one day, without warning, you'll realize You haven't thought about her in days, not because you forced it, or not because you tried to move on, but because you moved forward so fast, so far, so deeply into your purpose that she simply faded. Not with a bang, not with a breakup, but with silence, the silence of irrelevance. And that's the ultimate win. Not that she misses you, but that you don't miss her. Not that she regrets leaving, but that you're grateful she did. Because without that pain, without that loss, without that breaking point, you might never have become the man you are now. Stronger, clearer, unstoppable. And when you stand in that truth, when you walk with the quiet confidence of someone who has been through hell and came out with a mission, you don't need her to see you. You just need to keep going. Because your future isn't waiting for her. It's waiting for you. And you're already on your way. You don't need to prove you've changed. You don't need to show her your new body, your new income, your new confidence. Because the moment you feel the urge to prove anything to her, you're still trapped in the old story. The one where her approval was your currency, where her attention was your reward, where your value depended on her eyes. That version of you is gone, or at least he should be. Because real transformation isn't something you display, it's something you live. It's not for an audience. It's not timed to make someone regret. It's not calculated to spark jealousy. It's deeper than that. It's waking up and choosing yourself. Not because you want to impress anyone, but because you finally understand you are the mission. And that changes everything. Most men use no contact as a tool to make her come back. But the strongest men use it as a tool to rebuild their soul, to reconnect with their fire, to reclaim their standards, to stop begging for loyalty and start demanding it from within. Because the truth no one wants to admit is this: she didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you were too easy to leave. You tolerated what you shouldn't have. You stayed when you should have walked. You loved when you should have leveled up. And now, in the silence, you have a choice: to repeat that pattern or to break it forever. And breaking it doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean shutting down. It means becoming so deeply connected to your purpose, so grounded in your self-worth that no one can shake you. Not her words, not her silence, not her presence, not her absence. That's real power, not aggression, not pride, but peace. Unshakable, earned peace. The kind that comes from knowing you faced your weakness and chosen strength anyway. You don't need her to see your progress to know it's real. You feel it in your posture, in your decisions, in the way you no longer flinch at loneliness, in the way you wake up early not to punish yourself, but to invest in the man you're becoming. That's where freedom lives, not in her return, but in your independence. The moment you stop tying your healing to her reaction is the moment you win, not because you've defeated her, but because you've freed yourself. And that freedom, it's louder than any message, it's stronger than any revenge, it's deeper than any regret. Because it's not about her, it's about you, about the daily choice to grow, to build, to show up, even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even when no one notices, especially when no one notices. That's when character is forged, not in applause, not in recognition, in silence, in solitude, in the dark hours when all you have is your word, and you keep it anyway. That's integrity. That's strength. That's the foundation of a life that can't be broken. And when you live like that, with discipline, with focus, with unwavering commitment to your rise, you don't need her to come back. You don't need her to apologize. You don't need closure, because you are the closure, the end of weakness, the beginning of power. The proof that a man doesn't fall apart when he's left. He rises sharper, clearer, and more focused than ever. And when you finally walk into your future like that, unbroken, unstoppable, free, you won't even look back. Not because you hate the past, but because your future is too bright to turn around. You don't need to hear from her to know you've won. In fact, the moment you realize that, the moment you truly accept that your peace doesn't depend on her message, her apology, her regret, you've already crossed the threshold. You're no longer playing the game. You've rewritten the rules. Because real victory isn't loud. It doesn't come with a text at 2 a.m. or a desperate call begging you back. Real victory is quiet. It's the calm in your chest when her name comes up. It's the lack of reaction when you see her photo. It's the deep, unshakable, knowing that your life is moving forward, with or without her, and it's better because of it. Most men think winning means getting her back, but that's not winning. That's returning to the same cycle, the same imbalance, the same loss of self. True winning is breaking free, not just from her, but from the need to be needed by her. It's realizing that your worth was never in her hands. It was in yours all along. And the second you reclaim that, everything shifts. You stop chasing, you stop waiting, you stop analyzing every silence, you start building. Because now your energy has a new direction, not toward her, but toward yourself, toward your body, your mind, your goals, your future. And that's where real power lives. Not in drama, not in attention, but in consistent, relentless growth. You don't become dangerous by threatening her ego. You become dangerous by no longer caring about it, by becoming someone so focused on his mission that her world can't even reach him. That's the kind of man who doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need to prove anything. He just is. And his existence alone is enough to disrupt the past. Because when she hears about you, not through a message, but through the ripple of your progress, and realizes you're not hurting, not begging, not looking back, something inside her shifts. Not regret, not love, recognition. That she didn't just lose a partner, she lost a future. And you're living it. That's the ultimate form of closure. Not words, not conversation, but evolution so complete that the past can't hold you. You don't need to forgive her to move on. You don't need to forget. You just need to stop letting her occupy space in your mind that belongs to your dreams. Every second you spend thinking about her is a second stolen from your potential. Every ounce of energy you give to the past is energy you can't invest in your rise. And the world doesn't reward pain, it rewards action, it rewards results, it rewards the man who shows up day after day and builds something real. That's who you are now. Not a victim of heartbreak, not a man waiting for love to save him, but a man creating his own value, his own strength, his own peace. And when you live like that, with fire in your purpose and discipline in your routine, you don't need her to see you. You just need to keep going. Because your future isn't built on her attention. It's built on your consistency, on your choices, on your refusal to stay broken. And one day, without fanfare, without announcement, you'll realize you don't miss her. Not because you forced it, not because you moved on, but because you moved forward, so far, so fast, so deeply into your own life that she simply doesn't matter anymore. And that's not cold, that's freedom, that's power. That's the man you were meant to be, not in spite of the pain, but because of what you did with it. Keep going. The world is waiting for the man you've become. You don't need to be the one she regrets. You need to be the one she can't reach. Not because you're hiding, not because you're punishing her, but because you've moved so far beyond the version of you that she knew, so deep into your purpose, so committed to your growth, that her world no longer intersects with yours. That's real power, not the kind that shouts, not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that rises in silence, builds in solitude, and emerges so transformed the past doesn't just fade, it becomes irrelevant. Most men waste their pain trying to make someone feel guilty. Chase reactions. They want to see the moment she realizes what she lost. But that's not freedom. That's still attachment. Real freedom is not caring whether she sees it at all. It's waking up every day and choosing yourself. Not for her, not for anyone, but because you finally understand that your life is yours to build, and no one gets to vote on your worth. You don't need her to validate your strength. You don't need her to acknowledge your progress. You just need to keep moving. Because every rep in the gym, every page you read, every goal you crush, it's not about her. It's about the man you're becoming. The one who doesn't flinch at silence, the one who doesn't beg for attention, the one who stands tall not because he's praised, but because he knows his value. And that kind of man, he doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. His energy is focused forward, on his mission, on his discipline, on the life he's constructing brick by brick. You were never meant to be someone's option. You were meant to be a standard, a man who doesn't compromise his peace, who doesn't trade his time for empty affection, who doesn't let someone else's choices define his self-worth. And the moment you stop measuring your healing by her absence and start measuring it by your growth, everything changes. You stop being reactive. You become intentional. You stop waiting for closure. You become it. Because closure isn't a conversation. It's a state of mind. It's the quiet confidence that you've done the work, that you've faced the pain, that you've chosen yourself again and again, even when it hurt. And that's what destroys ego. Not drama, not revenge, not success for show, but peace. Deep, unshakable peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've been tested and you didn't break. You rebuilt, stronger, sharper, clearer. And when you carry that peace, when you move through the world like a man who has been through fire and came out with purpose, you don't need her to see you. You just need to keep going. Because your future isn't built on her attention. It's built on your consistency, on your daily choices, on your refusal to stay small. And one day, without warning, you'll realize you haven't thought about her in weeks. Not because you tried to forget, but because you've become someone so focused, so driven, so alive, that there's simply no room for the past. That's not moving on. That's moving up. And when you stand in that truth, when you live with that level of clarity and strength, you don't need her to regret leaving. You just need to keep building. Because the man you're becoming, he's not waiting for anyone. Or he's already arrived. You don't need to be the man she wishes she never let go. You need to be the man who never lets himself go again. That's the real shift. Not winning her back, winning yourself back. Because the deepest betrayal wasn't hers, it was yours. The moment you silenced your truth to keep her close, the moment you ignored your instincts to avoid conflict, the moment you convinced yourself that love meant suffering in silence, that was the real loss. Not the breakup, not the goodbye, but the slow erosion of your standards, your fire, your self-respect. And now, in the stillness you're facing the truth, you allowed yourself to be diminished. Not because you were weak, because you forgot your strength. But strength isn't something you lose. It's something you neglect. And like a muscle left unused, it atrophies. But it never disappears. It's still there, buried under regret, under pain, under the weight of what could have been. And now you have a choice to keep digging through the past or to start building the future. Most men stay stuck in the story, replaying every word, every look, every silence. But stories don't change lives. Actions do. And the most powerful action you can take right now is simple. Stop waiting to feel ready. Start building anyway. Wake up early. Lift heavy. Work harder. Speak less. Do more. Because discipline isn't punishment. It's proof. Proof that you're serious. Proof that you've had enough. Proof that you won't tolerate weakness in yourself anymore. And that's what changes everything. Not time, not distance, not hoping she sees your progress, but the daily, relentless decision to become someone who no longer needs her attention to feel valuable. You don't crush her ego by making her miss you. You crush it by becoming someone she can't even understand, someone who doesn't react, someone who doesn't care, someone who moves forward with such focus, such clarity, such unshakable purpose that her world can't even touch him. That man doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need acknowledgement. He just keeps building because his mission is bigger than her presence, bigger than her absence, bigger than the past. And when you live like that, with your eyes on the horizon, not in the rear view, you stop being affected by her existence. Whether she's happy, whether she's watching, whether she regrets it, none of it matters, because your peace isn't dependent on her life. It's built on your own, on the choices you make when no one is watching, on the way you show up when you're broken, on the way you keep going when everything in you wants to stop. That's real strength, not loud, not flashy, but deep, unbreakable. And the more you build it, the less space she takes up in your mind. Not because you force it, because you replace her with something greater, your purpose, your growth, your future. And one day, without realizing it, you'll notice you haven't checked her profile in weeks. You haven't replayed the argument. You haven't imagined a different ending. Not because you tried to move on, because you moved forward. So fast, so far, so completely into your own life that she simply faded. And that's not closure. That's evolution. The kind that doesn't announce itself, it just is. And when you finally stand in that truth, when you walk with the quiet confidence of a man who has been through hell and came out with a mission, you won't need her to know what she lost. You'll already know what you've become. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything.